Unfortunately, this is one of the major skills that I see even veteran entrepreneurs sometimes don't have. Doesn't matter if you have a great idea. If you cannot sell it, well, then you're stuck. You have to also be self-motivated to learn, which a lot of us are not used to. We become so competitive. And what if we just bundled together and, solve the problem ourselves amongst us and just had a discussion? Wouldn't that be better?
So next up on our series, so you want to start a business, I'm going to tell you a little bit about funding opportunities and also what are the typical ways that people traditionally would be able to fund their business. So if you're thinking, I have no money, how am I supposed to do this? I mean, believe me, every single entrepreneur has been there at some point in their life. So funding, the fun is in there, but it's not so fun in funding, okay? Now, the funding aspects of starting a business, that can be a constraint for a lot of people. But even if you're broke or poor, there's always ways to find money. Why? Because if you have a good idea and you have all the other skills I've mentioned in the previous video, you probably can find that money. I'm going to show you essentially all the different ways that you can go get that funding, go get that capital to start your business and to kick it off the ground. First way, bootstrap. Bootstrapping is essentially literally pulling your boots up, pulling yourself by the boots and taking yourself to the next step and to the next step and to the next step as you pull yourself. And the truth is, we were a bootstrapping business. Both times I launched the business, I bootstrapped because I hate having to rely or answer to investors who are greedy bastards. And maybe, I'm just throwing out some of these stereotypes out there, but not all of them are like that. But to be fair, because my value was all about independence and freedom, I didn't want to have to answer to investors. So I was like, I'm going to bootstrap this whole thing. Also, I had the benefit, even though I was broke, I had a lot of savings because I had worked really hard. And to this day, I've been using my savings all the way through 2 years into my entrepreneurship journey just to be able to survive. So pay my bills and keep costs low. Bootstrapping essentially means that you put your own money in, you or your business partners, and then you split up the capital according to, or you split up the shares according to the capital that each one of you has put in. So for example, if Amy brings in $2,000, Peter $1,000, then they have a total of $3,000. That's the evaluation also of the business. This means Amy got 2/3 of the business and Peter owns 1/3. This does make a difference, okay? So just be wary that whoever brings in the most capital has the most say in the business. Now, let's say none of you have money. Okay, then it would be really difficult to bootstrap. But bootstrapping usually comes from talking to friends and family, colleagues, anybody with money. Bootstrapping also involves using the revenue that you start to generate from your business to actually fund the business, to reinvest back into the business. Now, technically, all the businesses, no matter how you're getting your upfront capital, you should all be reinvesting the revenue. However, if you've tested your idea in a free format or freemium version or something like that, or through crowdfunding and community work, then you probably can have a pretty good product market fit if you designed an idea based on everything that the customers or direct users or ideal users were telling you and you were listening to them. And that will lead you to have sales in higher numbers from the get-go, which is kind of what happened with us at Experience Stockholm. We already understood the market. We had been guides, the three of us, me and my business partners. The three of us had already been had an accumulated experience of over 10 years in the tourism sector in Stockholm. So we understood and we had been listening to what the customers, the tourists, the visitors were asking us. Hey, we would like this offer and it's not available. So we had this almost immediate product market fit for this specific target group. Because we had already done 3 years of research, for example. But if you don't have that ability to either generate revenue right away, or you need a huge amount of input, capital input up front, anything that involves making something. So I was a service business. It's a little bit easier. If it's a product, then you probably need a lot more money up front. After bootstrapping, or even if you don't want to bootstrap, let's say you're like, nah, I don't want to use my own money, even if you have it. I don't want to pull my own shoelaces up by myself. So instead, maybe you would like to go crowdfunding Crowdfunding is like when you set up a GoFundMe, but actually it's for your businesses. So it's usually like for prototype kind of ideas where maybe you want to build a prototype of a 3D printer, or you want to build a prototype of whatever. So there's some upfront costs, but people are invested in that. Maybe you have a community of developers or a community of designers, and they kind of follow you on social media, they're following you on Reddit. If you already have that following, or you have someone who wants to support your vision, you can set up this crowdfunding link, a GoFundMe page, whatever it is, where you can actually ask people to pitch in whatever they can. So $5, $10, and then you actually can use that money to fund your prototype, develop your prototype, whatever it is that you want to use it for. And actually, I know some people who have done this, especially if they have a community online. It's usually easier this way if you have no other access to capital. Another way, the seed funding. The seed funding usually means you already have some proof that people actually care about your business and they want to see more products from you or services they're buying. But seed funding usually involves sometimes going through an incubator. That is an option. An incubator, by the way, is like a program where if you get onboarded and you get in through the applications, which you usually just do online, then it's like a couple weeks to a few months long. And during this incubator process, you get coaching, you get business advice, you get pitching advice. They teach you about business plans, about business models. And then what ends up happening is that by the end of that incubator journey, you usually present or pitch to a group of investors. And if they are interested, they will invest in your business by the end of that incubator process. Beyond just that prototype that has already been tested, or maybe this business idea that has already been validated in some way in the market, you can go directly to angel investors or venture capitalists. Now, there is a difference. If I can remember that correctly, you can correct me if I'm wrong. But venture capitalists are different from angel investors in the way that they invest. Angel investors usually, they'll be more involved, meaning that they actually might bring in network, meaning people that can help you grow the business. They might actually bring in connections. They might bring in specific advice for your market, for your field. Venture capitalists are less involved, but they do bring the capital, right? That's what they do. And they usually invest in all kinds of companies. They have a big portfolio of companies so that they can, diversify their revenue streams, but also diversify their risk, so minimize their risk. And there's usually several rounds that you have to go through. Maybe you're not going to just get one investor to give you all that money. So bear that in mind. This process usually lasts between 1 to 4 or 5 months long. And then impact funding. Now, this is quite a new concept in the investment world. But the truth is, it's one of my favorite concepts, because if you are working on an idea or a product or service that is innovative or groundbreaking in some way, typically associated or related to sustainability practices and sustainability goals, like the Sustainable Development Goals set by the UN, then you can typically apply and qualify for impact funding. So this involves grants as well as loans, like a traditional investment. And these impact funds, they're interesting for several reasons. The first reason is they don't necessarily always look at your company as you need to make profit right away, or you need to make a shit ton of profit. They're less cutthroat than the other type of investors that are looking for a return on investment as soon as possible or within a 5-year frame. They typically have an horizon of 10 to 20 years to see if your impact is going to trickle down to that, maybe then you'll have a profit. So it is more of a slow pace, long-term, futuristic thinking. But impact funds, and specifically grants that they're associated with impact companies, are booming right now. One of the most famous ones is called Norsken. Norsken has a location here, so they're an impact investment ecosystem. So they are just one of the main ecosystems I know that is trying to work on funding these impact companies. Now, the final way, there's a lot of ways you can find money. You can reach out to people on LinkedIn, DM message if they're rich people. Maybe if you have an interesting enough proposition, they might want to do it. There's all these funding applications also for, I'm thinking like the Y Combinator in Silicon Valley. That's another one you can just apply. But going back to the final way is a bank loan or otherwise government funding. But usually government funding only gets approved if you have a bank loan. So bank loans or bank credit lines, usually it's the bank you're with for your business. You approach them and you say, hey, I need this much capital. This is my idea. Here's my business plan. This is how I'm going to make money. You can give them your current figures if you have any sales, or you can give them projected figures. If they approve the loan, then you have some starting capital. It's not ideal because you have an interest rate, obviously. But the interest rate here through the bank is usually lower than the one through government funding loans. Government funding can be broken down into grants and loans, but loans are typically more common, unfortunately. Even the grants, they have so many requirements, and it can be really difficult and time consuming and soul sucking to do these applications. I'm currently going through the process, so I know. But the loans, you can, for example, here in Sweden, look into Almi, which is a state-funded kind of like investment fund and investment company. They offer you a loan on top of what the bank gives you. So if the bank doesn't approve a huge loan for you and you need more money, then you probably can try Almi, and they will set up an appointment with you, go over your financial figures, and kind of decide if you qualify for an extra added loan. Now, those are some ways for you to get some funding, get capital for your business. And if you want to find out now how to look for strong, ethical, and competent business partners in your startup journey, check out your next video. Our next video is coming up. So yes, see you then.
How the heck did you find such great people, friend? How did you manage? Why wouldn't you go into business with your friends? These are people I knew their best days and their worst days. I knew what I could handle with them. The people who said yes, they're the people who are not co-founders today.